Join the movement. Go all electric with Pure Electric.
Hello and welcome to this short video about our house, Homepatch. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're on, the Wurundjeri, and just give my heartfelt thanks and respect and acknowledgement to elders past and present for their incredible care of the land and waters. I think about how they lived here for such an incredibly long time in balance by only taking what was needed and making sure there was always enough for every other person and thing. And to me, that's what our efforts to live more sustainably are about, is finding a better balance between what we're expecting from our surroundings and the land and waters and animals and what we're giving back. So I hope that through Sustainable House Day and other activities like this, we can get a little bit closer to that balance. But I feel heartbroken that has been lost, and about the way that the traditional custodians of this beautiful land have been treated. So yes, I'd like to acknowledge all of the Wurundjeri, which is where I'm based, elders past and present, and those emerging, and thank them for all of their care. I'll talk a little bit about our home. There are a few things that have really played a part in how we've come to where we've come. We've lived in this area just over 20 years, and we ran a small business almost all of that time, still do, in the sustainability area. We've always been also very connected to our local communities, very, very strongly tied in, lots of volunteer work. And we also have a strong permaculture philosophy. So quite early on, it was clear to us that we wouldn't, knock things down or knock the house down and start again, but instead try and fix up what we had. And we also decided quite a while back that we would stay here as long as we could and just make improvements that would help us and suit us, less than thinking about making things perfect in case we were going to sell next year or something. So those factors have all played a part in how we've done things. So this is the kind of place to visit, although we're not open every year. Sometimes we just have this video up. But it's an old style house, a 1970s house. And we've done things as much DIY and low-cost upgrades as much as we can. I've been actually a presenter and teacher in home energy efficiency for a few years, so it's a good place if we are open to the public. Then it's a great place to come and ask questions about pretty much anything to do with upgrading an older house and a newer house. Any questions welcome. I do have a timeline of what we've done, but I won't go through it in detail. You can pause the video and have a look if you like. Really, all I want to show is that we've been doing this for the last 20 years, going from absolutely no knowledge to sort of about 7 years after living here, I did my first training in home energy efficiency assessing. Since then, I've become an accredited Scorecard Residential Efficiency Assessor, and am now doing lots of presenting and training. So it's been a real journey as a person, as a family, as a house. And it's taken a long time. We've only just electrified our house last year. If you come to our home, or if you want to just know more about it, there's a bunch of things we've done, and I won't go through them in much detail, but this is so you can get a bit of an idea. We had every draft imaginable in our original home, And we, for example, the open louver window, which is typical of a 70s house, we just put some clear acrylic there. We didn't replace it with a new fancy window. We used to have vented old skylights, the kind that are open at the top, and just have a mesh grid at the bottom, not stopping air movement at all. So originally we put a ceiling level layer on there, but we've actually since removed it entirely. We had wall vents, ceiling vents. These have been filled in with cork or covered in insulation from the roof. So the drafts have been dealt with, but you can still see they're there. And that's what I mean, I guess, about doing it what's easy instead of thinking about beautification. Ceiling insulation, we had a couple of upgrades over the years, and this is the second and final one with a crosshatch of polyester insulation over the existing 2 layers of glass fibre. And we do have an extension room that was probably done in the 80s or 90s with a flat ceiling, and we had insulation blown into that from plaster, from the internal plaster. There was no way to lift the roof. So that's actually a very useful thing to do if you have an inaccessible flat roof. With the windows, we've done lots of improvements. Luckily, they were all timber frame to begin with. We added either heavy lined curtains with invisible pelmets, or more recently, we've upgraded some of those to honeycombs, or not upgraded, but swapped, just because we wanted a little bit more light in those areas. We've done quite a few window glazing upgrades, various kinds of sort of DIY versions. We did buy one new double glazed UPVC framed French door online secondhand, and the builder put that in for us, knocked out some of our wool and put it in. Other than that, we've kept all of our original timber frames. We did buy some secondhand panels, 10 of them for $100 or so on eBay, and we had our local handy person sort of modified our existing frames to fit those. So that's one thing. We've also done a bunch of secondary glazing, which is probably better to see on the next picture, the top one, where he's attached clear acrylic cut to size onto the existing timber frames. And then down below, I know this picture isn't very beautiful, but it shows where we've put clear comfort around windows in our bedroom at least 15 years ago. That's why the tape is so old that it's yellowed. Apart from that, the clear comfort film is still there. As you can see straight through it. So really that was just to show that that is a very cheap way to secondary glazed windows, and it can last for an awfully long time, as long as you don't mind the yellowed tape, or you could just replace it with new tape. The new tape is perfectly clear. Underfloor insulation was important for us because we have an open underfloor subspace with lots of airflow. We're on a hill on stilts, and we ripped up all the 70s carpet, so we only had floorboards, and so this underfloor insulation was important for us. We also got wall insulation pumped in. We have a half weatherboard and half brick veneer house, so it was pumped into both sections. And the image at the bottom right you can barely see where they've pumped into made the hole in the mortar between the bricks. The top right image shows the little hole where they've gone into the weatherboards that we've just sanded over and painted. Heating and cooling, when we first moved here 20 years ago, we had a couple of really awful unflued gas space heaters and a box air conditioner that we don't know how old it was, but it sounded like an aeroplane taking off. So it's been amazing to get rid of them and get proper, new, efficient reverse cycle air conditioners. Haven't looked back. We also have a range of other things just to help us with heating and cooling, ceiling fans, personal heating devices, heated throws and seat pads and deciduous plants to help shade us in summer, and we use ventilation after a hot day. We do have a solar system. It's fairly small, 3.6 kilowatts, and it does have shade, but we decided it was still worth us putting it in, even though we had loss from shade. We did go from a resistive electric hot water system to a solar gas boosted system with evacuated tubes, and you can see those tubes on the roof. They're still there, but it's actually been decommissioned and we now have a heat pump. We did that when we went off gas completely. We have a lot of usable space in the house, even though it's a small 3-bedroom house. We have 5 adults living here, so we extended this deck or veranda on the front, which is got the roll-down cafe blinds around it, which gives us a lot of extra space. We also have space at the back, which we use for a lot of food prep, actually, but also for drying our clothes. We've got the washing machine out there. We store all of our beer and wine making equipment, the Fowler's preserving kit that we preserve tomatoes with. We've got a food dehydrator, and that runs out there as well, so it's not heating up the house. We make all sorts of things out there. So it's fantastic space. This picture is when we just did it, but it's actually a lot busier and fuller than that now. Because of the permaculture aspect, we've got a lot of systems set up that help us reuse and, think simple things like a little bucket where we just put every piece of metal that has to be recycled, and that gets taken to the operations centre and put in their scrap metal bin. We've got different things that help us drain out bottles and bags and Ziploc bags and plastic bags, because sometimes the hard bit is having the system. If you've got the system, it's really easy. You just stick them on there and they dry, but if you don't, they flop all over the kitchen. We have a very productive garden. We've got about 1/3 of an acre, but only the top part is north facing. The rest is all south. So we really focus the veggies and the fruits at the top. We've got various kinds of ways to deal with organic waste, compost bay, compost bins, weed tea bins where we put anything we don't want spreading. We grow a lot of food. We've had a variety of different kinds of gardens, and these pictures mostly show the sort of reclaimed buckets and baths and things we've used, but just in the last year or so, we've changed quite a few of them over to metal wicking beds, and that has been fantastic. They're just so good at holding the water that it just works better for us. Anyway, that is the last slide, and if we're open, I hope you come to see us. If our house is not open this year, I hope that you've still got a little bit of inspiration about the kind of things that you might be able to do. Thank you very much for listening.